The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Dr. Rebecca Torres didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed on the screen showing patterns that shouldn't exist. The Deep Space Communications Array in Chile had been running routine sweeps of the cosmos for 3 years, mostly picking up radiation from distant pulsars and the occasional burst from a dying star. This was different. "David, you need to see this," she called to her colleague, who was hunched over another terminal across the room. The facility was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of wind across the Atacama Desert. "David." Kim looked up from his cryptographic analysis software. He had been working on improving Earth satellite encryption when Rebecca's urgent voice cut through his concentration. "What is it this time? Another pulsar with a weird signature?" Rebecca shook her head. "No, this is artificial. Look at these patterns." She pointed to the cascading data on her screen. "This isn't random cosmic noise. There's structure here, mathematical sequences that repeat but with variations. It's like someone is having a conversation." David rolled his chair over to Rebecca's station. The signal displayed as a complex waveform with nested layers of information. At first glance it looked like static, but as David studied it more closely, he began to see what Rebecca meant. There were definite patterns buried within the chaos. "Where is this coming from?" David asked, his fingers already dancing across the keyboard to run his own analysis. "That's the weird part," Rebecca replied. "The signal isn't originating from any single point. It's bouncing between multiple sources in space like a network of relay stations. But the primary vector seems to be aimed at a region about 47 light-years away." Professor Alan Wright, the facility's linguist, emerged from the break room carrying a fresh cup of coffee. He had been working late trying to decode some unusual radio signals from the Andromeda Galaxy. "Did someone mention patterns? I heard excitement in your voices." Rebecca gestured for him to join them. "Alan, remember those theoretical communication models you showed us last month? The ones about how advanced civilizations might structure their messages?" Alan's eyebrows rose. "You mean the nested encryption theories? Please tell me you haven't found evidence of those?" "We might have," David said, pulling up a different analysis window. "Look at this. The signal has multiple layers of encoding. There's a surface layer that looks like standard digital information, but underneath there are quantum-entangled data packets. And below that, something that resembles multidimensional coordinate systems." The three scientists spent the next hour diving deeper into the signal. Alan ran linguistic pattern recognition software while David worked on the cryptographic aspects. Rebecca coordinated their efforts and continued monitoring for additional transmissions. "This is incredible," Alan muttered, staring at his results. "The mathematical structure suggests a complex grammatical system. There are recurring elements that could be words or concepts, but they're arranged in ways that don't match any human language family." David was equally amazed by what he was finding. "The encryption is beyond anything we've developed. They're using quantum superposition to encode multiple messages simultaneously. But here's the strange part. I can actually break some of it. Our classical encryption methods seem to work as a key for certain sections." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, trying to process what they were discovering. "So we're looking at a signal that's artificially created, uses advanced technology we barely understand, and seems to be part of a larger communication network. But it's not aimed at Earth." "Exactly," David confirmed. "According to the trajectory analysis, this message is being transmitted toward the TRAPPIST system. Whoever sent this doesn't know we exist." Alan stood up and began pacing, a habit he had when processing complex information. "Think about what this means. We're essentially eavesdropping on someone else's conversation. But the implications are staggering. This proves that not only is there intelligent life out there, but it's technologically advanced enough to maintain interstellar communications." Rebecca saved their preliminary findings to the secure server. "We need to document everything carefully. This could be the most important discovery in human history." Over the following days, the team worked in shifts to monitor and decode the signal. They discovered that transmissions occurred at regular intervals, suggesting an ongoing dialogue rather than a single message. The mathematical patterns became more familiar as they developed better analysis tools. I think I've identified at least two distinct communication styles, Alan reported during one of their evening briefings. The structure suggests we're intercepting a conversation between two different parties. They have different grammatical patterns and vocabulary usage. David had made progress on the encryption front. The quantum layers are starting to make sense. They're not just encoding information, they're embedding multiple data streams within each transmission. It's like they're sending a letter, a map, and a video call all at the same time. Rebecca coordinated their findings into a comprehensive report. We need to be careful about who we tell. This information could cause panic or lead to premature actions. But we also can't keep it secret forever. As the team prepared to contact their superiors, another transmission arrived. This one was different, longer, more complex, and carrying what appeared to be visual data embedded within the quantum layers. I think we just intercepted something big, David said, watching the data stream across his screen. This isn't just a casual conversation. The complexity and length suggest this is important information. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Important to whom? And what does it mean that we're the ones receiving it? The signal continued transmitting for another 6 hours before finally ending. When they finished their initial analysis, the team sat in stunned silence. They had intercepted what appeared to be a detailed communication between two advanced alien civilizations, complete with star charts, technical specifications, and references to other species. We're not just eavesdropping anymore, Alan said quietly. We're witnesses to something much bigger than we imagined. Rebecca looked at her colleagues, knowing their lives had just changed forever. Tomorrow we contact the government. Tonight, we make sure we have everything documented and secured. As dawn broke over the Atacama Desert, 3 human scientists sat surrounded by evidence that they were no longer alone in the universe. The message hadn't been intended for them, but they had cracked it anyway. Now they faced the question of what to do with knowledge that could change everything. The morning light filtered through the blinds of the secure briefing room as Rebecca Torres faced a table full of officials she had never expected to meet. Director Amanda Ross of the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs sat at the head of the table, her expression grave as she reviewed the decoded transmissions. The room also contained representatives from the military, intelligence agencies, and several scientists from other institutions. Dr. Torres, let me make sure I understand this correctly, Director Ross said, looking up from the thick folder of documents. You're telling us that you've intercepted and partially decoded communications between 2 alien civilizations, and that these communications contain detailed information about their technologies and political structures. Rebecca nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. That's correct. The transmissions appear to be diplomatic in nature. We've identified references to trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and what seems to be a mutual defense pact. David. Kim, who had been invited to provide technical expertise, activated the presentation system. The decoded sections reveal star charts that don't match any human astronomical records. The coordinates reference systems and celestial bodies that we've never observed. But the mathematical principles underlying their navigation are recognizable. General. Patricia Hayes, the military representative, leaned forward. What kind of technologies are they discussing? Are we talking about weapon systems? Some of it appears to be weapons-related, David admitted. But much of it focuses on resource extraction, energy generation, and what we believe are terraforming technologies. The level of advancement is far beyond anything we've achieved. Professor Alan Wright cleared his throat. From a linguistic perspective, we're dealing with 2 distinct species. The communication patterns suggest different cognitive structures and social organizations. One species seems to favor direct, efficient communication, while the other uses more complex, layered messaging. Director Ross set down the folder. Have you made any attempts to respond to these transmissions? Absolutely not, Rebecca replied firmly. We've maintained strict monitoring protocols. As far as we can determine, neither species is aware that their communications are being intercepted. Dr. Elizabeth Park, a xenobiology expert who had been brought in to consult, spoke up. What can you tell us about these species themselves? Any physical descriptions or biological information? Alan pulled up another section of decoded data. The transmissions include what appear to be medical or biological reports. One species seems to be silicon-based, while the other appears to be carbon-based but with significant technological augmentation. Both species have lifespans that far exceed human norms. How long have these communications been ongoing? Asked Director Ross. Based on the pattern analysis, we estimate they've been in regular contact for at least several decades, Rebecca answered. The relationship appears to be well established, suggesting a long-term alliance or partnership. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just dealing with the discovery of alien life, they were looking at evidence of an established interstellar civilization with multiple species working together. General Hayes broke the silence. What about the defensive pact you mentioned? Are they under threat from something? David brought up a new set of decoded fragments. This is where it gets concerning. There are repeated references to a third entity, never named directly, but referred to in terms that suggest extreme danger. The defensive preparations they're discussing seem to be in response to an expanding threat. Expanding in what sense? Director Ross asked. The communications suggest this unknown threat is moving through space, consuming or destroying everything in its path, Alan explained. Both species are pooling their resources and technologies to prepare for what they clearly consider an existential threat. Dr. Park studied the biological data more carefully. If these species are as advanced as they appear, what could possibly threaten them both? Rebecca had been wondering the same thing. We've only decoded about 30% of the transmissions. There might be more detailed information in the sections we haven't cracked yet. Director Ross stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the morning sky. Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing a decision that will affect the entire human species. We have intelligence about advanced alien civilizations, their technologies, and an unknown threat that has them concerned enough to form military alliances. General Hayes crossed her arms. What are our options? We could maintain silence and continue monitoring, Director Ross replied. We could attempt to make contact with one or both species, or we could prepare our own defenses based on the information we've gathered. There's another consideration, Rebecca said. The transmissions we've intercepted appear to be highly classified information. We're essentially reading their diplomatic cables and military planning documents. If we make contact, we'll have to admit that we've been spying on them. Double quotes. Dr. Park raised an important point. We also need to consider whether our interception of their communications was accidental or if they intended for someone to find them. Advanced species might have contingency plans for this kind of situation, Alan shook his head. Based on the encryption patterns and transmission methods, these communications were definitely intended to be secure. Our ability to decode them appears to be due to the specific combination of technologies and methods we used. David highlighted another concerning aspect. The quantum encryption they're using is far more advanced than anything we've developed. The fact that our classical cryptographic methods can break portions of it suggests something unusual about their security assumptions. Director Ross returned to the table. Dr. Torres, I need you and your team to continue monitoring and decoding these transmissions. I want daily reports on anything new you discover, especially regarding this unknown threat. What about expanding the team? Rebecca asked. We could decode much more with additional resources. We'll provide whatever support you need, but the circle of people who know about this stays small for now, Director Ross replied. We need to understand more about what we're dealing with before we make any major decisions. General Hayes stood up. I'll be coordinating with defense agencies to assess the technological information you've provided. If there's a threat out there that scares these advanced species, we need to be prepared. As the meeting concluded, Rebecca felt the enormous responsibility settling on her shoulders. They had stumbled upon evidence of a vast interstellar civilization, complete with alliances, technologies, and threats that dwarfed anything in human experience. "Dr. Torres," Director Ross said as the room emptied, "I want you to know that what you've discovered changes everything. The knowledge that we're not alone in the universe is significant, but the fact that we've gained access to their communications gives us an unprecedented opportunity." Rebecca gathered her materials. An opportunity for what? To learn, to prepare, and perhaps to find our place in a universe that's far more complex than we imagined, Director Ross replied. "Your team has given humanity a window into something extraordinary. Now we need to decide what to do with that view." As Rebecca left the building, she looked up at the sky with new understanding. Somewhere out there, advanced civilizations were preparing for war against an unknown enemy, and humanity, by pure chance, had become witnesses to their preparations. The underground facility buzzed with activity as dozens of new analysts worked around the clock to decode the alien transmissions. Rebecca Torres had barely slept in the past 2 weeks since the operation had expanded, but the breakthrough they had just achieved made every sleepless night worth it. "This changes everything," David Kim said, staring at the translated text on his screen. The latest transmission had been their most detailed yet, and what they discovered sent chills through the entire team. Dr. Michael Bennett, a new addition to the cryptography team, looked up from his workstation. "The entity they're calling the Void Swarm isn't just another alien species. According to this, it's something that converts matter into more of itself. It's like a galactic plague that spreads from system to system." Rebecca studied the star charts that accompanied the transmission. "Look at these territorial maps. 3 months ago, the swarm controlled 12 star systems. Now it's up to 28. The expansion rate is accelerating." Alan Wright had been working with a team of linguists to decode the more complex communications. "The fear in their messages is palpable. Both species are describing the swarm as an existential threat to all biological life. They're not just fighting for territory, they're fighting for survival." The new intelligence painted a terrifying picture. The Void Swarm was a hive-minded entity that consumed entire planets, converting organic and inorganic matter into more of itself. It had no interest in communication or negotiation. It simply spread, consumed, and grew stronger with each system it conquered. "How are they fighting it?" asked Dr. Sarah Martinez, a military analyst who had been brought in to assess the tactical information. David pulled up a series of technical diagrams. "They're using something called quantum disruption fields and neural network viruses. The technology is incredible, but according to these reports, the swarm is adapting to their defenses faster than they can develop new ones." Rebecca felt a growing sense of dread. If these advanced civilizations with their quantum technologies and neural networks are losing ground to this thing, what hope would humanity have? It was during the 3rd week of intensive analysis that David made a discovery that changed everything. He had been working on a particularly complex section of encrypted data when he noticed something unusual about the swarm's infiltration methods. "Rebecca, you need to see this," David called out, his voice filled with excitement. "I think I've found something important." Rebecca hurried over to David's workstation, followed by several other team members. David had been analyzing the technical specifications of the swarm's infiltration capabilities. The swarm's primary method of penetrating enemy defenses is through quantum entanglement manipulation, David explained. It can subvert quantum encryption and neural network communications by exploiting the quantum coherence properties that make them work. "That makes sense," Dr. Bennett said. "Quantum systems are incredibly powerful, but they're also vulnerable to specific types of interference." David's eyes were bright with realization. "But look at this. The swarm's infiltration methods are specifically designed to counter quantum-based and neural-based communication systems. It's adapted to fight enemies that use those technologies." Rebecca began to understand where David was heading. "And we don't use those technologies?" Exactly, David said, bringing up a comparison chart. Human communication systems are based on classical physics. Radio waves, fiber, optic cables, electrical signals, all of it is invisible to the swarm's detection methods. Alan leaned forward, studying the data. You're saying that our primitive technology is actually an advantage? It's more than an advantage, David replied. It's a blind spot. The swarm has evolved to detect and counter advanced quantum communications. But it can't even see our basic radio signals? The implications were staggering. Dr. Martinez was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. If the swarm can't detect our communication methods, then we could potentially coordinate defenses that it wouldn't be able to infiltrate. Rebecca felt a surge of hope mixed with determination. We need to test this theory. Can we simulate the swarm's infiltration methods against our own communication systems? David was already working on it. I can create a simulation based on the technical specifications we've decoded. If I'm right, our classical encryption methods should be completely resistant to the swarm's quantum infiltration techniques. The team worked for the next 48 hours straight, developing and testing David's theory. The results exceeded their wildest expectations. Not only were human communication systems invisible to the swarm's detection methods, but human classical encryption actually created barriers that the swarm's quantum-based infiltration couldn't penetrate. This is incredible, Dr. Bennett said, reviewing the simulation results. It's like the swarm is using advanced tools to pick a lock, but our lock is so simple that the tools can't even recognize it. Rebecca realized they had stumbled upon something that could change the course of the war. We need to contact the aliens. This information could save their civilizations. But how do we approach them? Alan asked. We're talking about species that are thousands of years more advanced than us. How do we convince them to listen to advice from a primitive species they don't even know exists? Dr. Martinez had been thinking about the strategic implications. We have something they need. Our technology might be primitive, but it's effective against their greatest threat. That gives us leverage. Rebecca looked around the room at her colleagues. We're talking about humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. This isn't just about sharing information. We're potentially offering to join an interstellar war. David brought up the latest transmission data. According to these reports, the Karathi Empire and the Nexari Federation are losing ground rapidly. Their most recent battle resulted in the loss of an entire fleet. They're running out of options? The weight of the decision settled on the team. They had discovered that humanity's technological limitations were actually a strength against the galaxy's greatest threat. The question was whether they were ready to use that advantage to save alien civilizations they had never met. There's something else to consider, Alan said quietly. If we help them defeat the swarm, we're not just saving their species, we're preventing the swarm from eventually reaching Earth. Rebecca nodded. The swarm's expansion pattern suggests it will reach our sector of the galaxy within the next few decades. This isn't just about helping aliens, it's about humanity's survival. The team spent the rest of the day preparing their findings for Director Ross. They had discovered that humanity's supposedly primitive technology was actually the key to defeating the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The question now was whether they were ready to step onto the galactic stage and prove that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. The emergency transmission arrived at 3:47 local time, jarring Rebecca Torres awake in her quarters adjacent to the monitoring station. The automated systems had detected a high-priority alien communication, one that carried the unmistakable signatures of a distress signal. Rebecca rushed to the command center where David Kim was already analyzing the incoming data. His face was pale as he worked to decode the emergency transmission. "What's happening?" Rebecca asked, pulling up her own analysis terminal. "The Karathi border system of Acthan Prime is under attack," David replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "The Void Swarm hit them 6 hours ago. The entire system defense fleet is being overwhelmed." The decoded messages painted a devastating picture. The Karathi had deployed their most advanced quantum disruption fields and neural Network viruses, the same technologies that had protected them for decades. But the swarm had adapted even faster than before, turning their own defenses against them. Alan Wright arrived moments later, still pulling on his jacket. How bad is it? Bad, Rebecca said, reviewing the tactical reports. The swarm isn't just destroying the Korathi fleet, it's analyzing their technology in real time and developing countermeasures. Every ship they destroy makes the swarm stronger. The transmission included desperate communications between Korathi commanders and their Nexari allies. Both species were throwing everything they had at the swarm, but their quantum-based weapons and neural coordination systems were being systematically neutralized. Look at this, David said, highlighting a section of the decoded data. The swarm has developed some kind of quantum mirror technology. It's reflecting their own weapons back at them. Rebecca felt a chill as she realized what they were witnessing. This is what we predicted. The swarm has evolved to counter every advanced technology they can deploy. But our classical systems would be invisible to this quantum mirror effect. Alan finished. The swarm can't reflect what it can't detect. The three scientists stared at the data, watching in real time as an advanced alien civilization faced extinction. The Korathi were sending their final transmissions, preparing to evacuate their remaining population to deeper space. We have to do something, Rebecca said quietly. David looked up from his terminal. What can we do? We're just humans with primitive technology. They're fighting a war with weapons we can't even comprehend. But that's exactly the point, Rebecca replied. They're fighting with weapons the swarm can understand and counter. We're not. Alan was already shaking his head. Rebecca, you're talking about making first contact with alien civilizations in the middle of a war zone. We don't have authorization for that. We don't have time for authorization, Rebecca said, pulling up the communication protocols they had developed. By the time we go through proper channels, the Korathi will be extinct and the swarm will be that much stronger. The monitoring station fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of more emergency transmissions arriving. Rebecca looked at her colleagues, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination in their eyes that she felt. I'm going to send a message, she said finally. David's eyes widened. Rebecca, if you're wrong about this, you could be starting an interstellar incident. If I'm right and I do nothing, we're all dead anyway, Rebecca replied. The swarm will reach Earth eventually. This might be our only chance to stop it. Rebecca began composing the message using the same diplomatic protocols they had observed in the alien communications. She kept it simple and direct, knowing that both species were in the middle of a desperate battle. Unknown species monitoring. Communication frequency. We have observed your conflict with the Void Swarm. We believe we have a solution to your quantum infiltration problem. Please respond if you wish to discuss defensive coordination. Alan grabbed her arm. Rebecca, think about what you're doing. You're about to reveal humanity's existence to two advanced alien civilizations. I'm trying to save humanity's existence, Rebecca replied. If we help them stop the swarm here, we might prevent it from reaching Earth. David had been running calculations on his terminal. According to the swarm's expansion pattern, if it absorbs the Korathi Empire's resources, it will be strong enough to take the Nexari Federation within a year. After that, nothing will be able to stop it. Rebecca looked at her message one more time, then activated the transmission. Message sent. The response came faster than anyone expected. Within minutes, both alien fleets had detected the transmission and were demanding to know who had been monitoring their classified communications. This is Captain Reyes of the Korathi Imperial Fleet, came the first decoded response. Identify yourself immediately. How did you obtain access to our secure communication channels? A second message followed moments later. This is Admiral Vale of the Nexari Federation. Unknown species, you are in violation of interstellar communication protocols. Explain your presence on this frequency. Rebecca took a deep breath and began typing her response. We are representatives of the species from the third planet of the star system. You catalog as Sol3. We have been monitoring your communications through technological methods your security systems do not recognize. We have information that could help you defeat the Void Swarm. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for hours, though it was only minutes. When the responses came, they carried a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Sol 3 species, Admiral Vale's message began. Our stellar cartography shows your system contains only primitive life forms. How is interstellar communication possible? From your location, Captain Reyes was more direct. If you possess technology that can penetrate our quantum encryption, why do you claim to be primitive? What is your true purpose? Rebecca realized they needed to prove their capabilities. We will transmit our technical specifications. You will see that our technology is indeed primitive compared to yours, but it operates on principles that the Void Swarm cannot detect or counter. David worked frantically to compile a technical package that would demonstrate their communication methods without revealing too much about human civilization. The package included basic radio wave technology, fiber optic principles, and classical encryption methods. The alien responses, when they came, were filled with amazement and growing excitement. Incredible, Admiral Vale transmitted. Your communication methods are completely invisible to swarm detection systems. How did you develop quantum-resistant encryption? We didn't develop quantum-resistant encryption, Rebecca replied. We never developed quantum encryption in the first place. Our systems are based on classical physics principles that the swarm has no framework for understanding. Captain Reyes sent a more urgent message. Sol 3 species, if your technology can truly resist swarm infiltration, we need to meet immediately. The Acthan system has fallen, and the swarm is advancing toward our core worlds. Rebecca looked at her colleagues, seeing the same realization in their eyes. They had just committed humanity to its first interstellar war. We propose a joint meeting in neutral space, she transmitted. We will share our defensive technologies in exchange for your protection during the implementation phase. The responses came quickly. Both alien fleets agreed to the meeting, despite their ongoing conflict with the swarm. They would rendezvous at the edge of humanity's solar system in 2 weeks. As the communication session ended, Rebecca slumped back in her chair. We just changed the course of human history. David was already working on preparation plans. We need to contact Director Ross immediately. And we need to figure out how to explain to the world that we're about to host the first interstellar diplomatic summit in human history. Alan looked out at the morning sky. 2 weeks from now, alien fleets will be in our solar system, and they'll be coming to us for help. Rebecca felt the weight of what they had accomplished. The species that wasn't supposed to receive their message just became their best hope for survival. The hastily constructed space station hung in the void at the edge of the solar system, a crude collection of modules and communication arrays that represented humanity's first attempt at interstellar diplomacy. Rebecca Torres floated in the station's central conference room, watching through the viewport as 2 massive alien fleets approached their position. The Korathi ships were sleek and angular, their hulls gleaming with an almost organic sheen. The Nexari vessels were more geometric, covered in crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. Both fleets dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, yet they had come seeking help from the primitive species that had cracked their unbreakable codes. The Korathi flagship is requesting permission to dock, reported Tom Chun, the station's communication officer. Admiral Vale's ship is maintaining position at 2 kilometers. Rebecca nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Grant them permission. And Tom, remember to use the classical encryption protocols for all communications. We can't risk the swarm intercepting anything. The docking procedure took nearly an hour. The Korathi had to modify their advanced docking systems to interface with humanity's basic mechanical clamps. It was a perfect metaphor for the entire situation, advanced technology, adapting to work with primitive solutions. Captain Reyes was the first alien to set foot on a human-built structure. He was tall and lean, with skin that had a subtle blue tint and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. His expression showed a mixture of curiosity and desperate hope. "Dr. Torres," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent that sounded almost familiar. "I must admit, When we first received your transmission, many of us believed it was a swarm deception. The idea that a primitive species could offer salvation seemed impossible. Rebecca smiled. Captain, we've learned that sometimes the most impossible solutions are the most effective ones. Admiral Vale arrived shortly after, her delegation transported by a small shuttle that seemed to phase through the station's hull. She was shorter than Captain Reyes, with crystalline features that reflected the station's lights in fascinating patterns. Her people, the Nexari, had evolved from silicon-based life forms and had integrated technology into their biological systems. The technical specifications you transmitted are remarkable, Admiral Vale said, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that made it sound like music. Your species has achieved quantum-resistant communication through pure simplicity. It's elegant in a way we never considered. The conference room was filled with an unusual mixture of human scientists, alien military officers, and translation equipment. Rebecca had prepared for this moment for 2 weeks, but actually sitting across from representatives of advanced alien civilizations still felt surreal. Let me show you what we've developed, Rebecca said, activating the presentation system. We call it the Hybrid Communication Network. It combines your quantum technology with our classical systems. David Kim, who had been working around the clock to develop the solution, took over the technical presentation. The key insight is that the swarm's infiltration methods are designed to exploit quantum coherence and neural network structures. Our classical systems create what we call dead zones that the swarm cannot penetrate or even detect. The display showed a schematic of the proposed network. Quantum communication nodes would handle the high-speed data processing, while classical radio and fiber optic systems would provide secure backup channels. The combination would be invisible to the swarm's detection methods while maintaining the speed and efficiency needed for military coordination. Captain Reyes studied the schematics carefully. This is incredible. You're proposing to create communication blind spots that the swarm cannot exploit. Exactly, Rebecca replied. But there's more. Our analysis suggests that human-operated communication systems would be completely invisible to the swarm's command structure. We could coordinate your fleets without the swarm even knowing that coordination is happening. Admiral Vale's crystalline features brightened. You're offering to serve as communication coordinators for our combined fleets? We're offering to do whatever it takes to stop the swarm, Rebecca said. Our analysis shows that if the swarm absorbs your civilization's resources, it will be unstoppable. This is as much about our survival as yours. The aliens exchanged glances, and Rebecca could see the hope growing in their expressions. They had been fighting a losing battle against an enemy that seemed to counter every strategy they developed. Now they were being offered a solution from a species they had never heard of. There's one more thing, David added. Our classical encryption methods seem to actively disrupt the swarm's quantum infiltration techniques. We believe human communication. Officers aboard your ships could provide active defense against swarm infiltration attempts. Captain Reyes leaned forward. You're proposing that humans serve aboard our warships as communication specialists? We're proposing a full partnership, Rebecca replied. Human communication officers, hybrid technology networks, and coordinated defense strategies. Together, we might be able to stop the swarm's expansion. The negotiation continued for hours, with both alien species amazed by humanity's unique approach to the problem. What they had achieved through millennia of technological advancement, humans had solved through creative thinking and stubborn determination. I have one question, Admiral Vale said as the formal agreements were being prepared. How did your species develop such effective solutions without advanced technology? Alan Wright, who had been quiet through most of the technical discussions, spoke up. We had to. We didn't have the luxury of quantum computers or neural networks. We had to make simple systems work effectively, which meant we had to understand the fundamental principles. Captain Reyes nodded slowly. You developed intuitive solutions because you couldn't rely on advanced technology to solve problems for you. Exactly, Rebecca said. And that intuitive approach is what the swarm can't counter. It's adapted to fight opponents who think like machines, We think like humans. The final agreement was signed using both alien diplomatic protocols and human legal frameworks. Humanity would provide communication technology and personnel for the combined fleet, while the Korathi and Nexari would provide protection and advanced defensive systems. As the alien delegations prepared to return to their fleets, Captain Reyes approached Rebecca privately. "Dr. Torres, I want you to understand something. In all our centuries of technological advancement, we never considered that primitive methods could be superior to advanced ones. Your species has taught us something profound about problem solving." Rebecca felt a surge of pride mixed with humility. "Captain, we're honored to help, but we're also terrified. This is our first time dealing with anything beyond our own planet." "Fear can be useful," Admiral Vale said, joining the conversation. "It keeps you cautious and creative. Your fear of the swarm has led you to solutions that our confidence in our technology prevented us from seeing." The implementation phase began immediately. Human communication officers were transported to alien ships throughout both fleets. Rebecca found herself aboard the Korathi flagship, working alongside alien technicians to install hybrid communication arrays. The technology integration was challenging but successful. Human radio systems were hardened and miniaturized to fit alien ship architectures, while quantum processors were modified to interface with classical encryption protocols. The result was a communication network that functioned on multiple levels simultaneously. "First test transmission," announced Lieutenant Peters, one of the human communication specialists. "All ships, please respond using hybrid protocols." The response was immediate and clear. Ships that had been vulnerable to swarm infiltration were now communicating through channels that the enemy couldn't even detect. The network functioned flawlessly, providing both the speed of quantum communication and the security of classical systems. 3 days later, the swarm attacked. The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace near the Nexari border world of Kristila, expecting to find the same vulnerable communication networks they had exploited before. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented, a coordinated defense that operated through channels they couldn't penetrate. Rebecca watched from the communication center of the Korathi flagship as the battle unfolded. Human operators coordinated movements between Korathi and Nexari ships while the swarm's infiltration attempts failed completely against the classical encryption barriers. "Swarm vessels are attempting quantum infiltration of the command network," reported David, who was operating from Admiral Vale's ship. "No penetration detected. They can't even find our communication channels." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. For the first time since the swarm had appeared, an allied fleet maintained perfect coordination throughout an engagement. Ships moved in precise formations, weapons fired in coordinated patterns, and defensive systems operated in perfect harmony. The swarm, accustomed to turning enemy technology against itself, found itself fighting an enemy it couldn't understand. Human communication systems guided alien weapons with deadly precision, while classical encryption protocols prevented any infiltration attempts. "The swarm is retreating," Captain Reyes announced, his voice filled with amazement. "For the first time in this war, the swarm is retreating." The victory at Kristalla was just the beginning. Word of the successful defense spread throughout. Both alien civilizations and soon human communication officers were serving aboard ships throughout the combined fleet. The hybrid network expanded to cover entire star systems, creating zones where the swarm's technological advantages were neutralized. Months later, Rebecca stood on the bridge of the new joint command vessel, watching as the combined fleet prepared for the final assault on the swarm's core worlds. The enemy that had seemed unstoppable was now contained and weakening, unable to adapt to an enemy that operated outside its understanding. "Final communication check," she announced. All ships confirmed network status. The responses came back clearly, each ship confirming that its hybrid communication system was operational. Korathi vessels, Nexari ships, and even the new human-built communication relays all reported ready status. Admiral Vale approached the command station. "Dr. Torres, on behalf of both our civilizations, I want to thank you. Your species has given us something more valuable than technology. You've given us a new way of thinking. Captain Reyes nodded in agreement. The Korathi Empire formally requests that humanity join our galactic alliance. Your perspective and problem-solving abilities would be invaluable for future challenges. Rebecca looked out at the fleet of ships, representing 3 different species, all working together through communication systems that combine the best of advanced and primitive technology. Captain Admiral, we would be honored to join your alliance. But I think we've all learned something important from this experience. What's that? Admiral Vale asked. Sometimes the best solutions come from those who don't know they're impossible. Rebecca replied, smiling as she gave the order to begin the final assault. The battle for the galaxy was won not through superior technology or advanced weapons, but through human ingenuity and the willingness to think differently. The species that had never been intended to receive the message had become the key to saving everyone who sent it.